Hello everyone, my name is Tria Mellinia. I'm from Group 4. Today I'm going to continue my friend's performances about presentation of chapter 15 about teaching listening. Today I'm going to talk about three main points. The first one is about the principle of teaching listening. The second one about strategy of listening, a strategy of teaching listening from beginning to advance. And the last one is about assessment of teaching listening. So without further ado, let me start from the principle of teaching listening skill. In the teaching listening skill, as a future teacher, we need to consider some practical principles when we are teaching listening. The first principle that we need to know, that we need to understand, is about a focus on listening in integrated skill courses. We know that in a classroom, when we are teaching about integrated four skill, including listening, writing, speaking, and also reading, we need to focus. We need to focus and give our attention to each of them equally. Especially also when we are talking about listening here, we need to give some proportion, some great big deal of attention towards this listening topic itself. We need to make our students aware that they are not only learning about listening, but they need to actively learn on listening, and also practicing their skill in listening itself. That's the first thing that we need to know. The second principle that we need to understand is when we are using technique that are stimulating and motivating, especially when we are teaching them about listening skill. We need to use some technique that are motivating or naturally stimulating towards them. For examples, we need to consider several things like their objective, their background, their age, their proficiency level, or some things like that. If we know about that, we could naturally stimulating and also motivating them towards the best approach of how to learning about listening skill and improving listening skill itself. And the third principle is about utilizing authentic language and context. What does it mean? Authentic language is some things that we learning in our classroom, but could also be beneficial, have a direct relation towards the real life contact itself. We need to consider this thing, and we need to also to using this thing within our classroom context. Why? Because student will be more easier to understand about the lesson, about the knowledge that we are giving to them, if it had the same relation, if it's relatable towards their life outside of the classroom context itself. So it's also implemented towards our focus today, which is listening. We need to, for example, we're giving them authentic language, authentic listening skill practice. For examples like a conversation between two friends, conversations about hobby, or some things like that, that very relatable towards their life. And the third principles is including pro, while, and post listening technique. What does it mean? In the pro activity or the pro listening, we need to prepare them about what is the topic that we were talking that we are listening to today. We need to prepare them for all of that. And the second one, during or while the activity or during the activity, we need to make them more aware that to acquiring listening skill, we not only to passively listen to the audio or listen to the sound, but we also need to actively produce it. For examples, while we are listening to the audio, encourage the student to write it down some note, or matching the pictures, matching the sound with the picture, or some things like that. The way they are actively produce and actively consider it within their brain, it will be more beneficial for them in the term of improving their listening skill. And then in the post activity, we could give them some like direct question and answer, some discussion, to make them more aware, and more understand about the topic. The five principles is about carefully consider the form of listener response. Yes, this is a very important. Why? Because we need to know the stage of our students understanding, whether they are understanding fully, or there are still some stage, some kind of like the things that they don't understand. With this response, we could conduct the next step that we need to do within our classroom, within our class territory. And then the sixth principles is about we need to encourage our student on their development of the listening strategy. For examples, teacher need to introduce to them some listening strategy. For examples like to listening to music. For examples, when you love to listen to the music, start to guessing the actual lyric of that, or some things like that. When we encourage them to using the listening strategy, it will be more beneficial for them to improving their skill. And then the seventh, or also the last principles, is about including both bottom up and top down technique. My friend have already giving you the explanation about this technique. So simply, bottom up is like when we are teaching them from the very basic, from the simple one. For example, it's like we are learning about the syllables, syllable listening, syllables of the sound, and then when it's top down, we are giving them more on the actual acquiring of the meaning of the sound or some things like that. We need to both continuously using this both technique within our classroom activity. And then that's all about the principle for teaching listening skill. And then move into our second topic, which is listening technique from beginning to advance. We need to understand that listening technique is so many variety of this listening technique. But some things that we need to understand is we need to consider the age level, and not only the age level but also the proficiency level of our students. For examples, we divided it into the proficiency level, which is the beginning, intermediate, and also advanced level itself. In here, after we are considering their proficiency level, then we could take some listening technique. Listening technique mostly will be divided into two, which is the bottom down technique, top down technique, and also the interactive technique itself. For examples, we could see in here, like in the intermediate proficiency level, in the bottom up, we are learning about defining the stress level. In the top down, we will identifying the topic of the conversations, and the interactive, we will listening to confirm some expectation. There are so many variety of this listening technique, and it's up to you, up to the curriculum also, to consider which one that you want to use within your classroom territory. That's the second topic, and the last topic is about assessment. We know the assessment, the objective of the assessment is very simple. In assessment, our main objective is to evaluate the result of a listening learning process, especially students' performances. So, in the assessing listening in the classroom, there are two types of assessment in listening. The first one is formal assessment, and the second one is about informal assessment. We are starting from the informal one. Informal assessment is an assessment that you do without unplanned, and it's very spontaneous. It is very spontaneous. In this assessment, it's usually in the form of, for examples like a false discussion, direct answer between teacher and also the student, direct answers, and it will also be in the form of like feedback or some things like that. The specificity of this informal assessment is it's intended to not for scoring or grading format. And the opposite of this informal assessment is formal assessment. Formal assessment, as we are very familiar of, is intended for scoring or grading format. This assessment is more deliberately and also planned beforehand before the teacher come into the classroom. The test usually conducted after the listening activity could be in the form of like a formal question and answer, or could be in the form of a written text, the things that they have understand from the listening or some things like that. So that's all for me, all about teaching about chapter 15 from all of us from group 4 about teaching listening. May all of us could get some valuable knowledge, informative knowledge from this chapter for our future as a teacher. Thank you very much for all of your attention. See you on another occasion. Thank you very much.